There simply is no one like Steven Spielberg. I grew up on his films, and I love everything that he brings to the screen because he has a way of capturing an essence of a character and a meaningful, kind of heartfelt tone that many directors just don't understand. And Spielberg captures that in a way that is always different and unique and spellbinding to that specific story. And I love his work, but I went into this film wondering if it was going to be good because honestly, the trailers were not great. I was not blown away by the trailers, but I think part of that is definitely the fact that the art of a good trailer has been lost. There are so few good trailers anymore. I grew up in an era, the 80s, that I think some of the best trailers were released in the 80s. I don't know what's happened. Unfortunately, it's just not there. But anyway, this film is special. It is not perfect, but it is very special. And David Koepp's script is remarkable. And I also have a lot to say about that because I've been a fan of his work, but there's some hit and miss factor there that not all of his work is great, but not every film that he writes is directed by Steven Spielberg. And that's, I think, the key. The premise is hard to really get into without giving a lot away, and I don't want to give you any spoilers, but I'm going to say that essentially we're digging into a mystery here. You've got a guy who's on the run, trying to escape the men in black, I'm just going to say that, who are chasing him, and he's got something he's stolen from them, including a lot of data, and it all comes back to the premise we see in the trailer. So if you've seen the trailer, you know this part. It's about aliens. And the question is what's going on? What does he have? What is this device that he has? It's this great mystery. And the whole story unfolds that mystery and the people involved with it, because it's not just one guy's story. As much as we see in the trailer, definitely revolves around a few people, and the cast is brilliant. So I'm going to talk about the cast before I get to anything else, because I really am pleasantly amazed by the storytelling here with these characters. You have the great Emily Blunt as Margaret Fairchild, a TV reporter who really has the most unbelievable day, and she gets sucked into this story and this whole mystery in a way that is totally original, and she is really the center point of the story. You may not get that from the trailers or anything else, but she is the centerpiece here, and her performance is magical. Just unbelievable. Definitely one of her best performances to date. Emily Blunt is remarkable in this. You also have Josh O'Connor. I adore Josh O'Connor. He is such a special actor. He plays Daniel Kellner, and I love the way that name comes up in this film. It is a great joke. There is definitely a heart of comedy here, still working away. As classic Spielberg, there has to be some jokes. But Daniel is at the center of the mystery to begin with, and he's kind of our into the story. And I'm blown away by this performance too. I think it's really special. I wouldn't say that he steals the film, but he's very good, and you really want to follow along with his story. Wonderful storytelling. Colin Firth plays Noah, and he's essentially the big bad. I'm not going to go into that, but he's behind the Men in Black. He's behind this company that has been involved with the artifact that we're dealing with here in this story, and he's fantastic. And I have to talk about Coleman Domingo as Hugo. Just remarkable. Coleman Domingo is always one of the best people in any movie. It is, without a doubt, he is one of my favorite actors working today. He has such incredible emotion and range and style. I just adore him, and he's fantastic in this. He's not in it a ton, but he's in it enough that he just peppers the film with his brilliance, if you will. And that's the heart of all of this, is that this story is about these characters and how they intertwine. That's really the beautiful part of the story, is that it almost feels to me like one of those films where you get the different story arcs and how they all connect together. In the end, that's what you get with this story, and it's beautifully told. And it's not as convoluted as you get with so many films that try and do that, where the stories come together. You definitely don't get everyone's full backstory either, but it is very much a story of how these people came together and what they mean to each other. The biggest problem I'm going to say with the film is definitely special effects. There's not a lot of special effects that are bad, but anytime there's an animal on screen, it's not great. I'm going to say that is definitely the biggest failing point. I think that's something that's been lost recently in CGI, is the ability to make a good CGI animal has fallen apart. Essentially, that's the only thing that really took me out. There's a couple of special effects near the end that are also, but other than that, the film is beautifully shot. Amazing use of music and sound and style. The set dressings, the art direction, everything is stunning. I would say it's not my favorite color palette, but it is signature Spielberg. And those moments where you get the light, the use of light in a Spielberg film is one of my favorite things. I definitely think there's been some of his films that have had better use of light, but this is way up there. But the biggest thing to take away from this film to me, I mean, for starters, is the fact that the last 20, 30 minutes, the cinema I was in, quiet. There was not a sound. It was like sitting in a room full of just transfixed people, because the ending is spectacular and moving and jaw-dropping. There were a few laughs because there's a few shots that definitely lend themselves to comedy, which, again, I love that side of Spielberg, but it's very much like entering a trance. And I love that about this film, because it feels like everything builds. There's this whole emotion leading through the entire film that culminates in this final scene. And it's a bit of release, but it's not a full release. And I think that's really fascinating, because so many films have a way of kind of letting the gas off at the end. And this film, I almost felt like I left the cinema with more tension than you'd get from most film endings. And I'm not saying that as a complaint either, because I think that could be a complaint, that it doesn't feel like it finishes properly. But I think that's part of the point. I love the way Spielberg kind of dials up the tension throughout the entire film, and then he just lets it off a bit at the end. It's not a complete release. But the main thing that I want to talk about this film is the fact that it is very much a bookend to Spielberg's career. And I don't mean that to say that there won't be more films from him. But at the same time, this film really dives into, I want to say references, but not exactly references to his career, but elements of his career. So it is a mirror image of War of the Worlds. And there's even one scene, I would say that the first abandoned house that is used in this film, I would say it's either the exact same set or a very similar set as War of the Worlds. And I think that's on purpose, not just a reference. I think it's making a comment there that essentially this film is War of the Worlds if things had been handled differently. So if you have an aggressive alien species come to Earth, you have War of the Worlds. And if you have this species, then you have this film. And it's beautiful the way that is told. But I love how so much of it feels like it does call back to War of the Worlds in some ways. And that's, of course, David Koepp wrote that film too. And I think that was one of David Koepp's last great scripts. But it's also because Spielberg directed that film too. And I think Koepp and Spielberg work together beautifully. I love what they bring out in each other. So that's definitely a big thing. But yeah, obviously you have Close Encounters. There's an element of this that feels like a what if side of Close Encounters, or a, what comes next after Close Encounters, something like that. there's also an element to me of Minority Report. And I think that comes back to, there's a lot of chase sequences, but the tone of Minority Report carries through into this film. I can definitely see how so many different pieces, I would even say there's elements of almost all his films here. The other side of this film is the way it deals with empathy. I think it's fascinating to see the story of not just whether or not aliens are good or bad, or what impact they'd have on society, how people will look at them, but also the fact of what empathy means in that situation. And what empathy means to humanity today in the situations we're going through. It very much is a reflection of the political climate around the world right now. And I love also that part of this film, I feel, speaks to an even deeper topic of, if humanity saw this, what would they say? What would they do? What would they think? Would it change the entire world? And I think that's a big topic, and I'm not going to get into it here, but it is fascinating how Spielberg deals with it here and how you could interpret it in so many different ways. And I'm not going to say which one Spielberg meant, but I think you can interpret it a lot of ways that are very meaningful and profound. But so many of his films mirror themselves in this film, and it's a highlight as a fan to see all of that played out huge on the big screen, especially in IMAX. So in the end, you've got to see this film on the big screen. It is made to see in a cinema. I don't care what any other company tells you, cinema is alive and well, and there are beautiful examples of the ones you need to go see in the cinema for that experience, because so few experiences are like the cinematic experience. And I love that Spielberg is obviously so married to that. He's practically the reason it exists today. And there's so few directors who can do what he does on the big screen in a way that is so moving. I can't wait to see it at home. I will definitely watch it at some point again at home. But if I have a chance, I will definitely go see it in theaters again, because I think it's going to be a very different experience a second time. And that's also very cool. You'll never experience this film the same way you did the first time. I guarantee it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have thoughts on the film after you've seen it, I would love to chat in the comments. Let me know if you're a big Spielberg fan, what you thought of the references. Let's keep it non-spoilery if we can, but I would love to chat more about it. And if you can, like and subscribe. It helps my channel a lot. Also, tell me your favorite Spielberg film. I'm going to say it's actually Minority Report, but that is really tough for me to say, but I do love that film.